Hello out there, this is Marcel Waltz, the director of the upcoming movie Bloodfeast, and you're listening to withoutyourhead.com.
Welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neil, and I'm joined by the bus driver on the Party Bus to Hell, seeker of the Bill Murray experience, the goddess Ishtar herself, and maybe most importantly, third-time guest here in Without Your Head, Sadie Katz.
Oh, what an introduction. Like I said, I'm expecting some kind of badge of honor for 3 times the charm.
Yeah. I'm proud that you remembered me.
Of course.
So I watched the Bill Murray experience, and it's out on DVD this April. And it's really interesting. I really enjoyed it. And while I was watching it, one thing I was wondering, how long did it take you to make it? Because it does cover, it seems like it's over a long period of time.
Yeah, well, I started it, so it was from beginning to end, it was like 3 years, and then, it went into film festivals for another year, but it took a long time, mostly because, my life was happening in the middle of it, and it's funny, when I started making it, it was like I had this burning desire to do a documentary. I was in the middle of my breakup, and I was obsessed with Bill Murray. And then I got Wrong Turn, and it's so strange because I was really gun ho about the doc and was ready to go to the golf tournament in Florida, and then I got Wrong Turn, and all of a sudden I came back and I went from having a couple of people on my Facebook to having 5,000 in 3 days,
right.
By announcing that I did Wrong Turn, and then then I booked another film, and so it was sort of in some ways that kind of delayed it, and then as you saw in the doc, my friends weren't as excited about doing the project with me anymore, then it had to pivot a different way, and then money's always a factor, and I really didn't know what I was doing when I started off, so it became this thing, and Bill Murray was really difficult to figure out where the hell he was.
Uh-huh.
He's a little bit more on people's radars now because he had he did the concerts, and he's a little calmer than he was 4 years ago. Where he was just popping up everywhere, and that was part of the problem. Is I just didn't have unlimited money to just run around,
just travel everywhere.
Yeah,
exactly. So at any point in time, because like you said, when you first started making it, it's in the documentary. You just broke up, and so maybe you had a lot of free time and stuff. But then you start making movies, getting a lot of these horror roles. At any point during that time, did you think, well, maybe I just won't make this documentary?
Well, no, because I was just really believed in it. I was hell bent on it, and I was,
which comes through.
I got money for it, so a lot of it was the fact that it became this really fun challenge, but it also became a thing where because of spending money, because of starting filming, because so many people were really against the idea in the beginning, and I was well, why? I don't understand why this. I had something a little bit to prove of well, no matter what, I'm going to keep pursuing this. And I think this sounds so crazy, and I had a cut of this in the doc, and it just made me sound so off the wall that I was I already look like a fucking crazy person. But I mean, some of it was really feeling a little lost and lonely on and off during the process of filming, and really having a desire to connect with Bill Murray, and kind of I grew up with Cinderella and Disney, I grew up in Anaheim, so I think it started to take on this mythic, magical thing that I just started to feel overwhelmed that I if I didn't finish it, there was some reason that I kept needing to see Bill Murray, and in wanting that experience, which is so crazy. I know it's crazy as it comes out of my mouth. I'm that bitch be crazy.
But That's part of the charm of when you're watching.
More popular. Well, that's what you hope. I mean, when we talked with the editor, I went, "Oh boy," and I said, "I go, I'm going to be like on my gravestone. People are going to be like, here lies Sadie. She liked to show her boobs a lot and love Bill Murray." I'm like, it's so much more than that. I mean, it's sort of like when you're a hustler and you're in entertainment and someone says you can't do something, like that becomes it makes it a fever. And then you're like, fuck, I've been chasing Bill Murray for 2 years. Well, what's another year? Like, I got to keep going on a certain level, and then I'll know when to ultimately stop.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned this earlier about how you cut the documentary when some people started to fall out of it and stuff. While you're making it, did you your vision of what the documentary would be? Did that change throughout all those years?
It did, in the beginning, and you could tell when you watch the doc, I wanted it to be like Jackass, and that's why the camera's all shaky and stuff. And I also thought it'd be like a real friendship and empowerment. So if I didn't get Bill Murray, I would still have my friends, which I thought would be like this great message. And I wanted it to be about their quest. So the beginning idea for me was everyone would have their own New Year's resolution because it happened around Christmas or around New Year's. And this was my resolution and they had theirs, which I have the footage for half of them. But, my one girlfriend, Jenny, the Wonder Woman chick, was going to do stand-up. My other friend was moving out, Ashley. And then Jen was doing her, erotica book. And I thought that, and Genevieve was filming, and I thought that would be so kind of cool and inspiring. And so mine was to meet Bill Murray. But the problem was, by them not staying in the project, it's like you have to sit down. And for me, I was always, because I have a passion for storytelling. And I really do love, it was like the hero's journey was kind of my template, like every other film. And so I was always thinking as I was living my life, okay, if this doesn't happen, then I can go in this direction or that direction. So, I mean, documentaries are kind of like that. You're like, oh, I was searching for this, and now I'm over here. So, yeah, it's a long answer. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's good. That's so much better than yes or no. Yeah.
It was a really weird struggle for me, and also heartbreaking. And I also didn't want to throw my former friendships under the bus. Yeah. So that was something I was conscious of. I also didn't want them to sue me or something.
Right. It's this, I don't know how exactly to say this, but the documentary itself is almost like a documentary about the documentary, if that makes sense. Right.
And either people get that. I think a lot of people in the business get it. It's kind of meta. That was something that happened at the very end in editing, where I said, I went to a couple editors, and then Lee Shee is the one who filmed the stuff on the couch. And I was telling a lot of people about everything I'd gone through for this doc, and everyone's response would be like, well, did you say that in the doc? And I was like, that's a long time for me just to sit there. But the thing is, when I sat down to tell that, I felt I was really raw. It was almost like I had to do it. So we just sat down and for an hour and a half, I just sat through and said, well, this is what I was doing. And I mean, I was still super wounded about things in a certain way, and also still mystified by it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
There was, so when we did it and then we went to cut it, it was there was something kind of cool about the fact of it being so raw and new. And, so we started to shape it around that. And, if people like me, I guess they like it. If they don't, they'll be not into it. I mean, it's such a weird thing at the film festival, which it did really well, but I was just sitting there and I was like, oh my God, I've done so much crazy shit on screen, but this is the most vulnerable thing I could do. I mean, it was kind of insane on that level.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you left all that in, though, because I know you could cut it. Maybe like, oh, maybe I look a little too out there, so I'll cut it like some of that down. But leaving that all in there really makes the documentary because there's all different emotions there. Like sometimes you're very upbeat and happy and silly, and then there's clearly like you are upset there at different times, and so it all works together.
I didn't really say this, but like I'm bipolar, and I'm not like someone who talks about that because I think people it gets such a bad rap. It's like, if you say you're bipolar, it's like, oh, how could we have her on set? Or how does she survive? Is she like, and some of it really just has to do with like, if you watch the documentary and see, it's, sometimes you're just a little bit more up or a little down, or things can get kind of away from you. And at the time I was under so much stress. And so that was sort of what was going on without me even really knowing it. So, to me, I was like, fighting clouds, really, of going like, this is going to be so great. Why can't everyone be excited? And everyone's like, because you're fucking insane over Bill Murray. And I'm like, but on another hand, then, you tell people I'm doing this and they're like, that's so cool, Sadie, keep going for it. Mm-hmm. And like, I would love that. And there's people who honestly would like start crying and say how much they love Bill Murray. So you're like, well, I don't know. Yeah. Like, okay, I'm going to keep doing it. Like, that's kind of a magical wonderment.
Yeah, well, there's a part in the documentary I like, too, because obviously you're making this whole documentary about finding Bill Murray, and then, like, you actually go to a place where it's all art of Bill Murray, and you even say, like, some of the people have tattoos, and you're like, oh, well, maybe they like him a little bit more than me, or something like that. And I find
that just slow it back down, yeah.
Right.
I mean, that was, like, really funny, because a lot of doing the doc, guys, is also like, well, guys, I'm in the business. I'm doing a documentary about Bill Murray. And, like, my ex, who we were getting back together, he was like, you're way too obsessed with Bill Murray. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm doing a documentary where I'm supposed to be obsessed with Bill Murray. Like, my life and my work life and my real life had blurred. And, yeah, of course, I'm laying up in the middle of the night thinking about Bill Murray and how I could meet Bill Murray and, like, what I would say. And part of that was, like, what happens when you fall in love with any project. So it was, like, this crazy thing. But then when I went to the art gallery, I'm like, wow, these people are so Bill Murray crazy. I'm like, I don't know about them. But they were actually, what's so funny, I'm still friends with, like, all those people from the sit-down interview kind of went on this journey of the film with me. Mm-hmm. And they, like, showed up at the premiere. The guy who sings the motherfucking Bill Murray song, him and his wife are fabulous. A couple of, like, Jeremy Long, he showed up at all the screenings, and he's a stand-up comedian, and he's wonderful. I mean, so in some ways it, like, opens up, like, these other people that, like, if you're a super Bill Murray fan, you're fucking cool. Like, that's the rule. Assholes don't love Bill Murray. It's like, and most of the time it's people who are, like, in love with him being the party crasher and being the fun guy, because they're kind of like that and irreverent. So, and I got to know Joel, and and PJ was so sweet. And
that was one of my highlights. Uh-huh.
She's so rad. And I mean, we could have just done an hour and a half of just PJ. And, like, Joel is actually one of the funniest people, and he's super dry humor. In some ways, you're like, why isn't Joel as popular as Bill Murray? I mean, have you seen God Bless America?
No, I haven't. I have to see that now.
You're welcome, sir. That's all I have to say. It's crazy. It's about this guy who teams up with this, like, teenage girl, and they go on, this is bad because it's about guns, but a shooting rampage of all American Idol. It's very, very violent, but it's a little bit about, like, American Idol and those shows being such bullshit because of how bullying and people tease, and you have to see it. It's very good.
Sounds very good. I'll check that.
Yeah.
Don't take this the wrong way. When I was watching your interview with Joel, it was a little cringy, like, because you asked, like, what it's like to be Bill Murray's brother, and I just, like, I hear that, and, like, oh my God, I can't imagine, asking that. But it's totally awesome.
Okay, I'll tell you the truth. Joel, so here's your inside scoop. Joel I met a few times before we got the interview, and we had some beers together and had a fun time. I mean, he's a really decent human being. So when we did that interview, he was like, I'm only doing the interview if you have beer with me. I'm not a big beer drinker. So I was like, how about I give you shit during this interview? And Joel's very funny. So he was like, he was game for it. He wasn't offended. He had fun with it. And there was something, he's a little mischievous like that. Like, you know, but he's super dry humored. So at least I think he thought it was funny. I don't know, but
he looks like he did. He looks like he did. Yeah,
he did. And like we literally were pounding beers, which I mean, that was the one thing about this film. It was kind of fun because it wasn't. I ended up taking it like I do everything really serious, but the intention when I started was for it to be this like freewheeling, wonderful thing. But you know, maybe that's different of Bill Murray. Bill Murray's a very comfortable person. Sadie Katz is not. So I mean, that's the one thing of doing it. You realize that the art to his madness is that he doesn't really give a fuck. He's just enjoying himself. So, you know, you try to duplicate that. That's not an easy thing to duplicate.
Yeah, yeah. And PJ Souls, actually, for me personally, the first time I ever hosted a panel at a convention, she was in it. And she was very nice and made it very easy for me. So I've always liked PJ Souls. And it was cool
she's
that
so
you asked.
Kind.
Yeah, she's just great. And I've heard people kind of hint around about it, but you just asked her outright, like, I won't give away the movie, but you just asked her, right, did you get turned on during the scene with the spatula, and just with Bill Murray, and it was it was very interesting.
You could tell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you watch the scene, there's no denying that they're both just like jonesing on each other. I mean, we had to cut down. I had so many great stories of crazy things that happened with them on the set. You know, Bill whisking her away to this restaurant in the middle of nowhere that's like a French restaurant, and kind of, you know, she was sort of his wrangler because Bill could not be wrangled then and would like disappear from set, and they would put PJ on the case, you know, to say like, hey, go get Bill and get him to come onto set, which I think actors got away with that kind of behavior a little bit differently then. It was kind of expected because of Jim Belushi and, you know, so yeah.
A different time, yeah. And I saw that on your IMDb that she's in a movie that you're producing, PJ.
Oh, you know what? 13 Girls. We ended up losing the funding, and I swear I get so many emails about that. It's such a it's such a great script. It's about 13 Catholic schoolgirls who commit suicide, and the female investigator who kind of is trying to track down. She's just coming back after killing her partner on the force, and it's really a great script. So we'll see. Lots of demon possession, which is always a good thing. Yes,
definitely. I agree. So, you know, this movie being so personal to you, taking so long to make, and all the stuff we went through to make it, is it hard to like people to critique the movie? Because I assume it's hard for any movie, but
yeah, well, I sort of feel a little bit like, you know, I don't need them to say it deserves an Oscar. I feel a little bit like I think I can hear critique on the movie if it's, you know, about the film. I did have a couple of reviewers who were like really personal stuff about me. Like, why, you know, I think someone said, if you want to spend an hour and a half with this whack job, like that's up to you. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, it feels different. It does. It feels like painful in a whole other way because I feel so vulnerable. And I'm like, you know, but I'm sort of someone that like you either really love me or you're like, I don't know about that girl. So, I mean, I've had so many people really say wonderful things and enjoy the film, and I'm like, you know, I could only shoot what I could shoot about it and tell the truth. And I kind of think the same way with my acting. Like when someone criticizes it or loves it, I'm like, well, either one is sort of the same to me in a way. You like if someone says it's great because it makes you look good to, you know, your directors and stuff. But it's sort of like not me, not mine anymore. Like I put it out there. Because I don't know if that makes sense, but you're like, well, that's Sadie. That's Sadie at that time period who was working for Bill Murray, and she was friends with these people, and that's what happened during that time. So I guess I sort of like watch it from an outside perspective, and so I feel a little defensive, not for me so much, except like that girl. Like she, you know what? She's coming with a good heart. So there is something a little bit about that. But you know, movies are so subjective. I mean, everyone loves Shape of Water, and I loved it, but I didn't think it was the best movie of the year. And like, I must be wrong on a certain level because everyone was like super obsessed with it. So you know, some movies like speak to you in ways that you can't explain. And I made the doc for people who probably were like me, you know, like they say, you know, write what you know or make what you would love. And, you know, Bill Murray super fans tend to be really cool. So I figured this might speak to them or not.
Yeah,
you know?
I really like that. There's lots of things I already mentioned that make me like laugh that I like. Even just the idea of planning a spontaneous experience. I just think that in itself is great.
I mean, it is weird though, because now it's like I watch it and I'm like, I've like all the time I'll say sometimes like, gosh, people are so obsessed over actors or what's this deal with, and I'll be talking and then as I say it, I go, oh yeah, I forgot. I used to be really obsessed with Bill Murray. I spent 4 years of my life talking only about Bill Murray, and I'm still talking about Bill Murray. And if you get me started, it's like a flashback to a drug. I start getting really excited about Bill Murray again.
Maybe there'll be a part 2 then. I don't know.
Oh, God, no. Please. No, I'll lose all my friends.
Did they come back after you were finished filming?
Not really. I mean, I think everyone just kind of went off. I mean, it's sort of like an LA thing. It's like my career had started to change. They had gone different directions. It's, you know, it's like that age of girls where like you don't always get to keep everyone. Jen Lieberman, the one with the red hair that's curly, she came to one of the screenings, and like, you know, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons, but it's LA sort of like that. You start to, I mean, I have a ton of friends now, and you grow apart in different ways, or you do a project, and like everybody's got their hurt feelings, or you know how they wanted things to be. But I think Jennifer Wenger is getting married to Casper Van Dien, which is like what she always wanted, was to be married, and you know. So I wish her well, and I'm excited. And Ashley, I'm friends with on Instagram. We didn't end up using her footage as much, even though she's gorgeous, because we had her footage of her moving out and stuff. So, and she, you know, is doing well.
Yeah. Will some of that stuff be on like the specials? Will there be specials on the DVD?
Yeah, we have a DVD, like all the DVD extras. They have a lot more of the girls, of us kind of at the beach making New Year's resolutions, and I have a great interview with Mark Jones, the creator of Leprechaun. It's really fun.
Right. Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. You're like, well, you made Leprechaun, so you should. They should talk to you.
We actually see him on camera, which is really fun. And we were going to put it in the doc, but it came off so staged because it looked staged, which it wasn't. It was like, you know, he knew I was coming over to talk about the documentary. And I was like, I don't really want anything in the doc that's staged like this, but it's certainly fun and great. And you know, he's a funny, quirky guy. So if you're a Leprechaun fan or Rumpelstiltskin fan, he's my writing partner, and I actually love when I call him, and like he's hilarious. I mean, that we used to write together, so you know, he's a hilarious, funny guy. I was going to say asshole, but that's going to make it sound mean. But, you know.
You mean in a nice way. You're right.
Yeah, he's been in Hollywood a long time. I just argued with him about gun control this morning on the phone. And hung up on him. So, yeah, he's a funny guy.
Yeah. I also got to mention Party Bus to Hell was on video on demand April 13th. And how did you get involved in Party Bus to Hell?
Well, I have to say this, which I hate, but they had to rename it Bus Party to Hell because of the VOD scroll. But so it's Party Bus to Hell, also known as Bus Party to Hell. But I got involved with it through my manager, Robert Lombard, knew the producers on the project, and they actually sent me to do the part that Tara Reid plays. But I really fell in love with the bus driver and was like completely obsessed and wanted to play her. And Rolf Kaninsky's the director, and everyone was like, you're not really the bus driver. And I'm like, yeah, but I am. Except that, like, I didn't want anyone else to play her because I sort of felt like I could do something really interesting. And because it's like, that's a chunk of the movie where you're in the bus, I really felt like it would be a challenge to make this character kind of scary and fun and sexy and evil and weird all at the same time, because it comes at a time in the movie where, like, I kind of like stuff like, I like the idea of a character having that challenge to say, like, okay, you're re-engaging the audience attention. How can I do that? And I just loved her.
And how about the tattoos? I assume they're not your real tattoos. How long did they take to put the tattoos on?
Well, what they did, we had some problems with the tattoos. This was like a new thing, and they probably overcomplicated the process. But I wish I knew the tattoo parlor because I love the guys there. But I went to an actual tattoo parlor, and they hand painted half of the tattoos on me, and the other half are kind of stick-ons because there was a problem with being worried about the continuity. So I will say my modesty was a little bit, the little bit of modesty I had was a little bit weird because I had like 4 big burly tattoo guys painting all over my body. And so that was kind of odd. I mean, I really hadn't planned to be so topless in the movie, but there wasn't really a way for my character. It didn't make any sense if all of a sudden I threw on my clothes again. It just, right. At a certain point, you're like, if I'm doing this, I'm fucking doing it. Like, you know, like I might as well jump. And that's sort of how I am with everything. If I'm going to do it, I'm like, fuck it. I'm done. I'm going all the way. So the guys who did the tattoos were like pretty funny because I'm at a real tattoo parlor having someone draw all over me. Yeah.
Were you on set at all with Tara Reid?
You know what? I wasn't, because I won't give away her little destiny with me. But no, she was filming in the desert, and then I saw her at, I bumped into her at a couple of things, and she's a funny chick.
When you are filming on the bus, is it a real bus? Like, is that cramped?
Yeah, it was a real bus, and we were going to build build out a set with the bus, but because of not having that wall, and then we talked about replacing the walls, and then because of time and everything, they just decided, fuck it, we'll film on the bus. So yeah, it was hot, it was cramped, and really, really interesting because we had to film. Normally don't have an ensemble with like 5 people. So every scene was like just umpteenth takes because you had to do each person's close-up. So, a clean close-up. So it was definitely a challenge. It's also a challenge too if your character doesn't have any blocking. You're just kind of like, I was sort of stuck in the spot, and yet my character was supposed to be, unhinged and crawling with these creatures. So in some ways that made it like it's more difficult. In other ways, it became like a fun challenge to like, how can this character still be kind of interesting when she like literally has to stay in this like 1 by 2 foot square.
Right. Well, I actually had a lot of fun watching the movie, so people check that out. That'll be April 13th. And I do also want to mention Bloodfeast, which I know we talked a lot about last time, so you guys can go back and listen to that. But Bloodfeast is out, so people can check that out. And is the version out? Is it like
re-releasing it?
Oh, they are?
Well, yeah. Okay. So they released it. These distributors are so funny. But, because of the AMA, they released it, the cut version on Blu-ray, and now they're supposed to release on April 13th. They're going to release the director's cut, Marcel Waltz. And that's bloodier and more severe. And I think it's going to have a limited theatrical, is what I heard. So we shall see. I mean, that poor, the poor director there, we were ready to have this film come out a year ago, but we had so many problems with, the rating. So we'll see.
And I loved it.
It's exciting to have those out. Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
It's definitely a tribute to the original, which is cool that he didn't totally abandon it. Yeah, of course. Great.
Yeah. And real quick, because the last time I talked to you, you mentioned that you like bourbon. Have you ever been on the Bourbon Trail to Kentucky? Because since I talked to you last, I myself went on the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky.
What? It's speaking amazing. My language right there. Are you on a train?
No, you kind of have to. Well, I have a friend who lives in Kentucky, so I probably shouldn't say this, but I went to go to a Scare Fest. So I got a press pass for Scare Fest, but I really just went on the Bourbon Trail. And so we went all around Kentucky. He drove me around. And you take a tour of each of the distilleries, and then you get free samples, and it's a really, and then they have like bourbon that you can only get in their distillery, and it's pretty good time.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna look. I'm gonna Google all up on that. Yeah, I just signed up for this group. There's like all these whiskey chapters for women opening up. I just picture they all have voices like mine. My voice was always like this, but it's definitely that whiskey voice. So but I think whiskey is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. They even talk about that. They said for a few years, like vodka kind of almost didn't put them out of business, but it really hurt bourbon. But bourbon and whiskey starting to make a big comeback.
Yeah. What's the difference between bourbon and whiskey again?
Oh, they really explain it to you, and I probably should know all the differences, but there's 6 distinct differences. It has to be a certain over like 90 proof, I believe. They tell you all the distinct things. There's whiskey can be anything, but bourbon's a specific type of whiskey.
Interesting. See, I like mine a little watered down. So I take ice with a little water, and because I'm a girl, and I need to be able to be coherent. But to me, nothing tastes better than that. I like wine, but a nice bourbon, you're sort of like you sip it and you love it.
I agree. And when I was there, my friend who took me around, he got me a real moonshine, which I don't think that's legal. But anyway, that really you probably should stay away from the moonshine. After I drank some of that,
do you remember that evening?
Apparently, I was flying around the hotel hall thinking I was an airplane. That's what they told me.
Oh my God, I love you. That's exactly why we need to drink bourbon together.
Exactly.
I'm always like, was that the worst night of my life or the best? I'm going to say the best, but you wake up and you go like, well, there's nothing better than like being irreverent like a fucking kid and blaming it on the alcohol.
Exactly. Well, I always love talking to you, and we'll definitely have you back on the show.
Same. Then I'll be like, what's after if you say third time, fourth time?
Fourth, yeah. I don't know
what word is it?
Quadruple?
Triple? Quadrupled. Well, quadruple. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks, sweetie.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, this is Caroline Williams from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 and Sharknado 4. You're listening to Without Your Head.